Alright guys, I'm going to try something a little bit different this time. Little video series, build vlogs. Take you along with me as I do a build process. This time I'm going to try something very different, specifically to build a lightsaber. The saber in question, the Kagemitsu G4, i.e. Kirito's beam sword from Gengil Online. This is probably going to be a very bad idea to try to experiment with something like this using his lightsaber, because that freaking emitter head, I've still yet to figure out a way to build that thing. So, you know what? I'm going to make this thing non-collapsible just to see how this whole tube thing goes, see how that goes. If you want to follow along, I've got the schematics uploaded in the link in the description. So I've got two of these 110-pound cardstock cut down to about 25 centimeters. And then a 1 1/4 inch dowel rod, which I'm going to use to form the handle out of. See how this goes. Probably do like a test roll just to get the paper to take shape. I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking because there's not really much to commentate on. Everything's pretty self-explanatory. But you know, if this goes well, I might do some lightsaber props or something. Okay, that came off a little easier than I thought it would be. Okay, so that was a bad idea to pull it off of the dowel that fast, because now it's starting to warp on me. Put that back on. Okay. Ah, crap. That's not good. So what has happened now is this thing started becoming slightly off, so that's not going to do. I may just have to cut it. Whatever. The one reason I hate trying to build something that's tubular or cylindrical, because of this very issue, is that you can't reliably get it to roll evenly. And that creates problems. So usually what happens is I would end up rolling the tube and then just cutting it down to shape, and then most of the time that's where you actually mess it up the most, and then you just gotta scrap the whole thing and do it over again. It's kind of why that ring on Asuna's rapier is such a hassle to build. In fact, I still get to rebuild that thing. When I do, I'll do a tutorial, a full build on that thing again. This is going to be the end piece, because the front side is going to get something else over it, so you're not going to be able to see that. The emitter housing on it. So this is going to sit here and dry. This is probably going to contract a little bit. That's why I didn't want to leave it on that tube, that dowel rod, while it was wet, because this paper has a tendency to contract when it's wet or drying. So what would happen is you get a piece of paper that just grips onto that dowel rod, and I'd never be able to get it off again. You know what? Since we're doing this, I might as well just let this dry and then work on the blade. Probably gonna be like about 33 or 36 inches. I haven't quite decided yet. Wiki says 36 inches. So I might just go with that. For once, I'm going off a wiki because it's actually pretty damn accurate this time. The first time around, the wiki said, elucidator is 120 centimeters. I was like, yeah, right. So what these actually are is actually just the bottle caps to water bottles. I'm going to use this to create the diameter I need for the blade. This is going to be embedded, the cap is going to be embedded inside the emitter housing. That way the blade is actually detachable. So by simply screwing the thing onto it. And then this is just gonna get painted over or something just to try to blend it in a little bit better. And we're done, just pop it off and that's that. I might actually take a second one of these, create the emitter head itself. That way, when you just need just the handle, you can screw on the emitter head and it'll look just fine. I'll try that, see how that goes. Do this as a single piece or as a 3-piece set. I'm not too entirely sure yet. You know what? Let's do it in 3 pieces. That way we can collapse the blade down and be able to store the thing when you take it on a convention or something. And what's nice about this is that the handles can actually be made fairly thick in comparison to the blade. I'm not too entirely concerned about the blade itself, mostly because if it breaks, you can easily just attach it, pull off the hardware on it, and just make yourself a new one, because it's not that difficult to make a blade. But to make a handle, that's kind of where the whole aesthetic of that is. So the handle needs to be a little more better made than the blade. That, and these things are most definitely not going to be used for sparring, because I mean, come on, it's a paper tube. What do you expect to do with it? I don't know why. To this day, I've yet to be able to seal where the paper ends in one go on anything, really. But I hate doing this method because when I paint it, it's going to leave a very telltale mark that there was glue on this thing. Because when you put paint on something that has glue over it before and you let it dry, there will be a color difference. So at one point I was thinking about painting this thing purple and then getting like a couple 100 feet of EL wire, wrap it around this thing, that way turn off the lights, turn on the switch, and have this thing glow. I mean, they're fairly cheap, EL wire. I think I found for like 10 bucks or 15 feet of it. If this thing contracts more than I like, I can always just shim this thing and then pressure fit it on. That always works. And then, oh man, this would actually be a great extension to this. You know what? I might use that. Even the best paper tubes kind of want to come out ovular in shape because of the initial roll. Now I just got me something even smaller to go in that to create the outside, the actual tube I'm going to be rolling this in. And this just gets harder and harder and harder to do. I mean, the trick here is to not roll to that diameter you want in the first try, but instead just to work the paper into wanting to curl more and more. I mean, if need be, you can get yourself like a pen or something. If I had something like that around here, that would be nice. Kinda, sorta, not really. Third time's a charm. Balls. I let it go. And nope, that's where this whole thing falls apart. Wow, really, camera? You record in half-hour segments? What the heck? Okay, so I built something like this. The whole purpose of that is that the center of this is slightly thicker, so it kind of builds up its own taper. That way when I drop it down this tube, it creates a little friction lock. Now let's see if I actually have this, have the sizing right. Nope, completely goofed it. Nope, that doesn't work. A little bit better, but not what I was thinking. Great, I can't fit it in the back, nor can I fit it in the front, so it's like, great. Yeah, that's hilarious. It'll go in this way, but it won't go in the other way. That's not exactly what I was hoping that would happen. Hooray, I've glued this thing to the freaking mat. Now I can actually... Oh, there we go. Can't exactly get it off. Okay, so now what I've essentially done is that I put one layer of paper on the inside of the tube, and then about 2 layers on this thing. That way when it hits this thing, it just kind of creates a little lock because it's a different thickness. Hopefully that will hold for what I need it for, because this is supposed to be a showpiece anyways. But I don't want the blade to come flying out the other end when someone tries to extend the blade, because then it'd be a complete pain in the rear to try to assemble again. And yep, that did it. I'm gonna put this in here, and this is gonna be, I guess, gonna create the emitter housing, if you will. Because one thing I want to try to do is actually make these things in individual parts, have them painted, and then I'm gonna glue them all together in one final product. What am I doing? I have one of these. 4 pouring glue on this. Always check to make sure it is actually the right size you cut out. We are good. Yeah, when you're rolling tubes together, you want to make sure that the stop of the first tube and the start of the second strip of paper match up. That way you don't have any unnecessary air bubbles in it, or that little difference, that little bump you get. It's a good way to avoid it, but I'm just gonna leave this on here, let that dry like this, since it is a good diameter. That. Okay, so this side is not perfectly round. That's gonna make me mad in about 2 seconds. Nope, it's actually slightly bigger. I might have to redo this one. Okay, so this is that. I'm not too sure how many of these I'll need. I'm going to go cut the camera, make one more of these, copy all the footage over to my computer because my SD card is getting full. Alright, so off camera, I went ahead, glued this on, the emitter housing. This is going to be what the blade's going to be attached to, this little bottle cap here. And then the way this works, just simply it's going to get set in here, hot glued in place. And then when you view from the side, you don't see it. Something of this sort. Then you unscrew that, pull this out, and store it with just the handle. Put that aside, and now that this is done drying for the most part, I'm going to cut out the... Now, a lot of people have actually asked, how do you get your cuts so clean? The way you do it is that you work in straight lines. Curves are like a real hassle. Those are really difficult to cut. And you want to make that straight cut in one go. Now, I don't mean cut all the way through it in one go. I mean from one side of the line to the other in one go. Don't change directions in between cuts. Then make multiple passes on that cut. That way you get this nice clean cut going on, and don't run the risk of either tearing your paper or just, you know, finger fatigue. So something else that actually happens is that sometimes you'll get some paper that comes off with it when you are pulling a piece off. So what I do, I just simply just take some glue, glue it back together. It's not going to look exactly like the way if that hadn't happened, but unfortunately, besides cutting a new piece, you know, there's one way to save a piece. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of my stuff off of this. My camera's dying. Okay, so I got all the pieces and everything cut out. I do a little bit of spray painting on these before I put them together. Now for that silver finish, I'm going to use some of this stuff, mostly because it comes out a lot better than the gray, even though the metallicness of it is not going to be apparent on paper because it gets absorbed right into there, but that's not really what I'm concerned about. Yeah, can definitely see some of the paint seams on this. Not the paint seams, but the glue showing up as two different layers, two different colors. And that's the biggest problem with spray painting, is that you can see those lines. And now for the blade. Ooh, that is a very, very bright purple. Alright, now I realize I just painted the deck a shade of purple. My dad is not going to like me for doing that. Whoops. I can imagine having some tolerance issues when I put this thing back together. I'll just leave it here to dry for a bit and see what happens. So a lot of people also ask, I should probably address this too, what kind of sealer do I use? Well, is this Krylon acrylic. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me see if I get this in camera. Well, yeah, that's what I generally use. But this time I'm going to try something a little bit different. Modge Podge stuff. Now, the paint may dry fast, but this stuff will take some time. Woo, this stuff stinks. So my only real concern about these parts is, since I'm going to be holding them, I'm afraid you might scratch the paint, because this metallic stuff is really, has been known, at least for me, to easily scratch off. Learned that the hard way when I first... Actually, now that I think about it, this can of metallic stuff I sprayed on earlier is almost 4 years old. And I just sprayed all this stuff on my fingers. Nice. Now, I'm not going to do that to the blade, mostly because I already have some tolerance issues with this as is. But yeah, I'm going to let that sit here dry for about half an hour or so. Come back, check on it then. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so we are finally back with all the painted components, as you can see. Simple black tube. Got my hot, excuse me, got my hot glue gun and everything warming up. While we're doing that, let's glue the rest of these components to the handle. Start with this piece. Just gotta find out where I want to put it. Probably like right here, just so I can mask the seam a little bit better. I just realized that this is not long enough. Crap. I'll have to recut that. Oh, let's go with this instead. Gotta adjust the camera a little bit more, because you can't see anything. That's the one thing about working with cylindrical objects, is that you can't. Okay, now there is a burning smell. What is that burning smell? There goes the tube. That looks much better. Now to apply glue. Oh, come back. Yeah, this is definitely a problem I forgot to address. So all this stuff is going to be under tension of some sort. Guess rubber bands it is. Coat the inside of this. Insert this. And that looks about right. Essentially have something like this. Now just hopefully I got this in there straight, or else we're going to have some other issues. This way I can have the blade, you know, in its own separate little thing, and you just carry just the handle around on your side if it's just for a photo shoot, and then you want to draw the thing, just screw the blade in, and then you can just... I'm still working on the tip. I've got some tolerance issues on the tip. Whoops. But yeah, let's fully assemble this thing before we worry about the tolerance thing, because I can always rebuild that and repaint it, but without this, it's kind of the main attraction. And not too sure how long this is going to take to drop. I'm going to leave this. I cannot speak. This is why I do voiceovers on my tutorials, because I cannot speak on camera. Gotta make sure these things actually line up. Sometimes your favorite swords involve just you sitting there and hold it, because really can't get any sort of clamps or anything on it. This happens a lot. Practice your statue skills. One of my biggest fears is simply coming all this way and then one bad cut sends you all the way back to the beginning, because you can cut things off, but you can't put things back on. Not easily anyways. This is why we always measure twice, cut once. Clearly, I am not good at measuring. Well, that looks good. Ah, that's not good. Now for that third and final one. And that seems to be that. Okay, so finished product. As you can see, blade's about 37 inches long. It's collapsible. Close glimpse of this. Yet to do anything with the end cap yet, though. I've got to figure that portion out, but for the most part this thing is essentially done. The nice part about this is the blade is actually collapsible. If I can do this without breaking something, that'd be good. Well, except for this little thing, because little paint tolerance. Forgot about that. And then you can ultimately unscrew this, because bottle cap, as you can see. No, you can't see. But yeah, then you just get just the handle. You can have this stowed away elsewhere, and then you just have this, you know, on a carabiner hanging by your side for just a costume piece if you just need just the handle. And then, you know, blade extend, photo shoot type of thing. Screw in the blade, extend it, and that's pretty much that. Now this is definitely a costume piece, because swinging this thing around with any amount of force, I worry about things collapsing on themselves, breaking. This thing especially, the bottle cap detachment mechanism thing, not too sure how strong this will hold up because of all this weight on the end. But only time will tell. This is the first ever lightsaber, so it came out pretty okay, you know. Not the best thing I made, but you know, first of everything. Next one I'll make will probably be much better. But yeah, Kagemitsu G4.